Good evening, everybody. Welcome to The Other Side. Paul Fournier with my co-host Bob Serber. And I know a couple of weeks ago we talked about wanting to do some other things and get off of the school issues and get on to other things that have that are in the towns of both Spencer and East Brookfield and other things that surround the towns, you know. But you know what? You can't get away from this. You just can't get away from this. I guess let me start with this. I had a friend of mine calling me a couple of days ago asking me what was going on at Lake Street, and I said, well, I know that Mrs. Zablocki's contract wasn't going to be renewed, and you know, we chit-chat. He's like, no. He's like, there's like no secretary there. I said, what do you mean there's no secretary? There has to be a secretary. I think Paige, I forget what Paige's last name is. Oh no, it was Paige's mom, or I think had a massive stroke, and she had to take time off and spend time. I think she's down in Florida, and she hasn't been back. So Lake Street has been without a secretary to answer doors and talk to kids and stuff like that. Run security. So I made a couple of telephone calls. Well, apparently there's been no need. Apparently the powers that be have decided that there was no need for a secretary. Roll your teachers in and out. Let them answer the door. Let them answer the phone calls. Let them. So to the very bitter end, they're doing nothing more than continuing to bust Mrs. Zablocki's chops, right to the bitter end, to the day she walks out. Now, not only is this a problem with how she runs the school, okay, this is a security issue.
Oh, it's a huge security
that parents
issue.
had no idea that was going on. Paige, who works there, knows every kid that walks through that school, knows the parents, is in charge of.
Yes, she does.
In charge of a lot of paperwork. Okay, well, I guess what happened was Mrs. Zablocki had called Pat Simonovich, and
who is her other secretary.
She is supposed to be the secretary at Lake Street, and said, listen, you got to come in. Paige's mom died, so which is a whole nother story, but I need you in here so that we can operate the school, and you know, so you can answer phones and stuff.
Right.
Well, I guess Mrs. Simonovich decided that you know, it was you better clear that through Dr. Malvey, and I'm not sure exactly what happened, but apparently whatever Debbie asked for got turned down, and they said, nope, you run the school with. You can run it with teachers on their off periods. You can run, you know, we'll float some secretaries, a floating secretary or whatever it was. It was just ridiculous to find out. And some of this, a majority of the information did not come from Deb Zablocki. It came from other people inside of that school who are just totally disgusted with the way that whole school has been treated by both pupil services and the administration in the district. This isn't just picking on Mrs. Zablocki. It's the entire
It's picking on
school,
the whole school.
The entire school.
The kids are paying for this. And
you know,
the security issue alone should be enough to make people nervous.
Huge security issue.
I mean, what does Mrs. Zablocki do when Mrs. Zablocki goes out on the floor, as she often does? I mean, she's got small children, so she's constantly out. She's walking through the classroom. She's checking on the classes. What happens when she's out of the office? You know, Paige obviously isn't there because she's going through a bereavement process here, and it's an unconscionable thing. What happens if somebody comes up to pick up their child? What if somebody comes up to drop a kid off late? What if somebody comes in to drop off meds? What if somebody just comes up to, God forbid, just comes up to the door? I mean, it's an absolutely ridiculous situation.
Apparently, it was more important for our the secretary at Lake Street to work at Pupil Services, to do year-end closing things. I don't know if it's a continuation of writing grants or whatever. She is a secretary for Lake Street School. She doesn't work in Pupil Services. Karen Zaleski's in charge of Pupil Services. She's the head of Pupil Services, okay? She should have been there doing that stuff. Not taking a vacation during school. Okay, maybe if you didn't take your school vacation, or maybe if you took your vacation during normal school vacation times like everybody else, you know, maybe that would be okay.
No, I
but
can't argue with that.
you decide to take a vacation during the school year for whatever reason. It doesn't matter. Point is, you took an entire week away from pupil services that she's supposed to be running.
Well, she's running pupil services. She's running curriculum. She's, you know, she's running like running the MAPS thing. I mean, she's running like 4 or 5 different things. And from what we understand, she's also have people coming in and helping her doing evaluations. Now, if you can't do the job you're meant to do, which is basically
she's doing evaluations.
SPED, that's what
teacher evaluations.
Well, she's doing evaluations for
she's
her
never been a
portion.
teacher. She's never taught in a classroom. How can she give teacher?
I'm going by what that's what we've.
How can she do? How can she do teacher evaluations?
Well, there are other people coming in. Supposedly, there's been other administrators called and asked to help her do these evaluations. If you can't do the job, then
well,
maybe you're being overwhelmed by having too many things going on, and how does that benefit the school district? But that kind of gets away from the point of the most important issue here.
How do you leave the school without a secretary?
It's plain and simple. How do you have subcommittee meetings at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? Number one, you're doing it because you don't want people to show up, and number two, it becomes a security issue. And Josh brought that up. Josh, you want to chime in here on that? You had quite a bit to say about that when I told you about it.
The security issue?
Yeah, well, you and I were talking about it, and I said, I mentioned to Josh, I said, I went to
having
the meeting.
It just seems strange to me to have a meeting during school hours. I've never heard of us doing that. The earliest meeting I've heard of is meetings for collective bargaining at the Blue Building at like 3:45 or 3:30. To have a meeting during school hours at a school just seems irresponsible. I mean, people are going to come in the building. Hopefully they're going to check in, and then they're going to wander about the building until they find where the meeting is. I mean, you've been to enough of these meetings. People, it's been up in the, different areas. I don't know. It just seems silly to have people going in and out of the school that don't belong in the school during school hours. It's going to disrupt things too. The kids see people walking through, and I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand what the big secret is that we just can't have the meeting at 6 o'clock, like all the other meetings. But I don't know.
Well, probably because it doesn't fall into somebody else's agenda.
Well, the thing that bothered me with when I said that to Josh, and I said I went to this meeting and this is what happened, and then I heard about this thing with Mrs. Zablocki's school. And I'm like, this is no different than the 2 o'clock meeting thing. It's like, you're leaving a school basically unprotected. I mean, there's a very thin line of defense at schools to begin with, and unfortunately we have to be cognizant of that, and we have to be aware that these things can happen, that people can enter schools, and to not have anybody being able to monitor that door, let alone being able to just take care of the day-to-day operations, is just unsustainable. That's ridiculous.
I'm guessing that school probably takes more to run than the other
because of the age of the kids.
Absolutely. And you know something? You have pre-K, K, and first grade. They're 3 of the most impressionable years, and I think we did a disservice to that entire school. I think the administration in this district is awful. I think what happened with pupil services is awful. I think they treated that school, because Mrs. Zablocki was in there, as a second-rate school.
It's been a constant source of irritation for people, and it's some of the things that have happened, and a lot of the stuff we can't talk about, but we can talk about is things like what's going on with this. This is it's the most ridiculous situation I've ever heard. When I first heard about this from you, I was like, you got to be kidding. Josh, you wanted to chime in here?
Well, I just want to say, and I don't want to bring up the past too much, but they're punishing Mrs. Zablocki again. Since Karen and Malvi have taken over, they have been punishing her. It's been a fight to get rid of her, and they've had something against her. And I don't know what it is, but she bailed us out when we asked her to. She came in as the interim superintendent. She bailed us out when we were in a bad situation. She caught a lot of flack for it, and she's been punished ever since. And I think people forget that she did that. She bailed us out.
Do people even know that during that tenure, she had to bury both her mom and dad? Does anybody know how much she's been through? A clue? Any given clue?
I don't think people realize what she did for us and what she did for the school district and how much she's been abused by members of the school committee and the new administration. You know, everybody gets their favorites in there, and the other people they get picked on, and it goes. You know, there's your bullying problem right there. You know, you got bullying problems in Wire Village and Knox Trail. Well, it's the adults that set the example. The people who are supposed to be monitoring the bully themselves. You got a problem. And she's a perfect example of them bullying somebody out of the district. And it's too bad. She bailed us out when we needed her.
Well, you know what's ironic is this is the second time somebody's been bullied out of this district. Keep in mind, Rich Maha, who came into a level 3 school district, changed it to a level 2 school district, and Mr. Norquist decided that he was going to threaten Rich Maha with his job if he didn't hire one of his friends. There was documentation backing it up. I brought it up at meetings on 2 different occasions. I gave the documentation to all the school committee members, and all these school committee members now have put Mr. Norquist on a superintendent search committee. I'm like, are you high? Are you really serious here? This is the guy. This is a guy who can barely conjugate a verb, or describe an adjective, or even speak. It's like you're going to have this guy's going to pick the next superintendent? Are you serious?
So this is the same guy who openly campaigns against any override.
Oh no, he's not speaking as a school committee member.
He openly campaigns against any overrides or anything that has to do with the schools or the town. Constantly. He tries to walk a fence that you can't walk. You can't get, and they allow it time and time again for him. He's at a school committee meeting. He decides to get up, get down on the floor. Well, my name's Kurt Nordquist, and I'm talking like a taxpayer. Well, you can't do that. You just can't. Can you imagine a state rep getting, hi, I'm,
it's the same thing.
Blah, blah, and I'm here as a taxpayer, so I'm going to avoid it. Are you out of your mind? And they let it continue. That I think that superintendent search committee is a farce. That is a joke, a complete joke of who's on that thing.
Did we ever get an answer on what the complete list looked like, or what if there was a master list and you willowed it down to this?
No. Wow. No. There was everything went through Mr. Hayes. I called.
Have they posted the position?
That's a good question.
They formed the committee. Have they posted the position?
Posted the position
for the superintendent?
No, it's running through. It's running through. It's running through that same.
MASC.
Yeah.
MASC.
Right. So it's more of it's a screening.
But have they posted the position?
I have no idea.
No
Can't
idea.
answer that question.
Couldn't tell you.
But the 7 people that are on it, it's a screening committee. Okay. So I know there's a guy by the name of Charlie O'Connor who's the president of the Spencer Rescue Squad. The parent from Spencer is Tracy Jeffries, who I know Tracy. She's very nice.
Yeah.
Kurt Nordquist, which I have no idea why he's even on there. But there's a teacher, a parent/teacher from, I believe she's a special ed teacher from East Brookfield.
Mm-hmm. No administrators.
No. Michelle Grant, who's a teacher at Lake Street. And who am I missing? There's 7.
One other. I know there's one other. Well, the funny thing is,
like you said, no administrators.
well, the most amazing part of this is, where's Mr. Hayes and where's Mr. Cloutier on this committee? Mr. Cloutier has got more information to disseminate to the public, yelling at the public, yelling at everybody, you got it right, you got it wrong, but yet refuses to step up to the plate and own this thing. And Mr. Hayes should also be owning this thing. Let's face it, these are 2 guys who stood at the very beginning before they got on the committee and just burned the bridges down. You did this wrong and you did that wrong. And I said this before and I'll say it again. You can't look me in the eye, Paul, and tell me we're better off than we were a year ago. And I know you're not going to. We're not better off. Not. We are worse off. We've got 2 completely divided communities.
It's it's chaos is what it is. It is chaos.
It's insanity.
The analogy of the Viking ship with the paddles and everybody rowing, it has gone up a notch. up. You've got an interim superintendent releasing 2 principals. One principal hasn't even had an evaluation. She's been here the longest, and he can't even give you an answer of why she's being let go.
And
not that he has to.
And think about
okay, but you've got her entire school stands up for her, except for a couple of teachers who except for a couple of teachers who don't like her, and we're not going to go down that road and mention any names, but whatever. You've got parents who stick up for her. You've got a petition going around. This tribute from...
I wish we could have shown the video, but
the tribute was unbelievable, right? You've got my sons who are now going into the 3rd and 5th grade, who had her as, they were devastated. Devastated. She knows every kid's name. It doesn't make any sense. It does not make any sense where the interim school district were becoming a laughing stock. You know, I said it before, I said it again. I give no confidence that a guy sitting in that blue building, and he's got to go. Mr. Hayes, if you're watching, grow a set and get rid of him now. He's got to go.
And you know what the funny part about all this is, and I think this is pretty ironic, is up until the point where Deb started working for Dr. Malvey, always had exemplary, right down the line, exemplary reviews. Always been. In fact, they tapped her to be the interim superintendent. Now think about that. They tapped her.
I wasn't involved. That was that was done. Josh and Mary were involved with that because they were the chair and vice chair at the time. And
right.
There was a lot of things going on. They filled us in as things went along. But she was the backup. It's irrelevant. It's just disgusting how that whole school has been treated. Not just her, but that entire school has been treated like. And those are the 3 most important grades. Okay, I had this long conversation with Karen Zaleski a couple of years ago about creating a wraparound district. I had a long conversation with Cindy Ahern about creating a universal pre-K.
Yep, I remember that conversation.
I mean, it was serious stuff. It was.
You had that conversation with East Brookfield also, with the selectmen. I remember you guys sitting down and talking about that at the time.
They were
all for it.
They were all for it. If it was gonna cost money in the short term, but in the long-term
payoff.
Long-term, we would be able to get a handle on these kids that need. And the whole thing's a joke. A joke. I was played a fool by Karen Zaleski because she came through with nothing that she said she was going to do. Any of the things that we talked about, time and time, it wasn't just once, it was time and time and time again, over and over and over. And the way that the administration has treated that Lake Street school,
it's ridiculous.
I think is absolutely disgusting. And you know what? If Mrs. Zablocki doesn't come back, that's okay. I don't blame her.
Oh, absolutely not.
I wouldn't blame her. Because
she'd come back for the students, I think. I don't think there'd be a question about that.
But if it comes to a point where she doesn't come back here, some school district is going to get a pretty good administrator. So that being said,
but okay, and we'll just touch on this really quickly. There was as we mentioned, and don't adjust your set. This is actually how this shirt looks. I'm the gnome for summer here. The secret budget committee meeting. I found this to be more than a little disturbing. The only reason Mr. Cloutier brought this up at all was because Mr. Cloutier got caught. And at the last school committee meeting, Mr. Cloutier very quickly shuffled over it. The bottom line was there was a subcommittee held prior to June 5th. I believe it was May 29th, somewhere around that time. At that time, there was no minutes taken. There was also no posting of it. Now, I'm reading directly from the meeting notice from June 5th. It says a budget subcommittee meeting will take place on Thursday, June 5th, 2:14 at 2 p.m. at the Wire Village School. Agenda, and this is important, continued discussion of the FY15 school district budget. Now, Paul, if you had a continued discussion, wouldn't that infer, as I posted on our site, that there was a discussion prior to this? I mean, this doesn't say discussion of FY15 school, but it says continued discussion.
Well, I mean, it's the verbiage. It certainly sounds like they had discussion before, so it is what it is. Yeah, he got caught, and he just rattled off for about 2 or 3 minutes, I guess, maybe a minute, 2 minutes at the last school committee meeting, coming clean. I mean, he had to. He had to. It's the same exact thing that we as a school committee, the one that I was on, was chastised.
We're accused of.
Accused of? Oh, accused? You're having secret meetings and you're doing this and you're doing that and rah, rah, rah. And he does the same exact thing and then says, oh, don't worry about it.
That's okay.
Nobody will find out.
Now the funny thing with this is I go to this meeting at 2 o'clock. He looks up and I come walking in the room. Kevin Hayes comes walking in, and Charlie O'Connor's there, who at the time I didn't realize that was Mr. O'Connor. I'd seen him at the Paxton Spencer Rescue Squad meeting last year. And they start talking about this, and it was clearly obvious because they didn't say, Dr. Malvey didn't say, well, we need to have this discussion about this or we need to talk about this. They just went right into, well, you know, and I remember Mr. Cloutier was talking about this at length, and Mr. Cloutier was speaking about, I'm not really comfortable with cutting the assistant principal at Wire Village, which I agree 100%, okay? But it was obvious during the course of this conversation and other conversations that this was something that was brought up before because it wasn't brought up at this. It was just, they were just going in and saying, and Miss Messier said, you know, I want a little more time to think about cutting these 2 teachers. And I'm sitting there going, well, obviously they had a discussion before this. Well, long story short, after I called them out on this, I asked Mr. Cloutier, I said, I'd like to ask this committee a question. He goes, what's that? And I said, did you have a meeting in the Blue House last week? 5-second pregnant pause. Nobody says a word. Mr. Cloutier said, yes, we did. And then I said, did you post it? No, and that was a mistake. That was immediate. That was the immediate response for him, and I'm like, good for you, Vinny. You got that one right. But the bottom line is when I called Martha last week and I said, I called her 2 times. I called her a week and a half ago and I said, I'd like to get the subcommittee minutes for both of the meetings. And she said, I haven't gotten them yet. She said, let me check and call me back in a couple days. I called her back in a couple days. I said, Martha, did you get the meetings yet? She said, well, this is the best part. Dr. Malvey said there was nothing said at the previous meeting and nothing was voted on. Like, that makes a difference. If you have a subcommittee meeting according to the AG open meeting laws, you have a meeting, you have to take minutes. If there are things displayed, if there's budgets displayed, if there's any exhibits displayed, they all have to be part of a public presentation and made available to the public.
Should have disbanded immediately.
Well, the rumor we're hearing was when this was brought up to Mr. Cloutier said, don't worry about it because nobody's ever going to find out. Now, we can't verify that because we can't get any phone calls back. So I'm just going to put that out there. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. Knowing Mr. Cloutier, it more than likely did. Because Mr. Cloutier doesn't believe he's going to get caught. And he was stunned when I was there at 2 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon. And I took time off from work to go to this to find out what was going on. And now I still cannot get the budget committee meetings, minutes of those meetings, of either one of those meetings.
Because they don't exist.
Well, nobody was taking, the thing was, it's like
they
said, well, Dr. Malvey was taking minutes.
How can you write?
I didn't see
How can you record minutes if nobody's taking minutes?
I'm sitting there watching because I figured, well, maybe Martha will be there. And when I spoke to Mrs. Berthium, she said, well, I wasn't told about the meetings. And I'm like, okay, it's like keeping her out of it because she obviously had nothing to do with it. And I didn't see Dr. Malvey furiously scribbling any notes. So it's like, you know what? I'm tired of the lies. I'm tired of the BS with this school. It's like nobody can just come out and tell the truth. And when they get caught, it's this huge subterfuge of, well, we're being above board now. Well, you're being above board because you got caught. What do you want me to tell you?
Do we know, has the school committee scheduled a superintendent evaluation? Because I just happened to notice, I'm reading, you know, the local, the Telegram, and lo and behold, you know how we're hiring other districts are hiring superintendents.
It's not a good time.
Even though
it's not a
bad
good time, according to Mr. Cloutier.
Some of them are actually hiring principals and, you know, not interim principals.
Somebody better tell them.
And I have nothing against Mrs. Stainlam. I like Mrs. Stainlam, the principal at Wire Village, but she is an interim. And now we're going to have 2 more. We're going to get on that again. I don't want to get. But do we know if the school committee is going to do a superintendent evaluation, or is he just maybe Ted will do it on his own? I'll just do my own. I'll give it to you guys. You can vote on it.
Like the budget. We'll do the evaluation. We'll send it in to you, and it'll be okay.
It'll be all right.
It'll be super secret evaluation.
Well, that's you know, it is what it is.
But we're not going to beat that.
I don't want to beat it up anymore. let's go on to some other stuff.
I would like to mention the comedy show Saturday night was absolutely
I heard
hilarious. My hat's off to Bobby Parsons, all the guys from the fire department, and it was kind of ironic. At about 3/4 of the way through the show, these guys get toned out. The crew that's on duty, there's always an on-duty
Sure.
crew. Well, they get toned out. Well, Bob Marley picks right up on it immediately and says something about it, and the place erupts and goes nuts and gives these guys a standing ovation.
Did they? Do you know how much money they made? Or how much money they raised?
From what we were told, they
Fine.
raised $9,000, and I believe, don't quote me, but I believe half of that will go towards the scholarship fund or
That's
towards
awesome.
the funding for the scholarship fund. And by the way, the fire department, I believe, gave away 10 scholarships this past graduation.
Wow.
I mean,
I
these
had no
guys,
idea.
I mean, they're not having this comedy show to buy turnout gear, which they need. And turnout gear is the gear these guys wear every day. When
Right.
they go to fires, they have the gear. This is what protects them. This is what keeps them safe. And instead of going out and spending money and putting this money into stuff that's going to keep them safe, they're giving scholarships to high school kids.
All right. Well,
That's pretty amazing.
Let's stay on the fire department just quick.
Sure.
You know how the overrides failed, correct?
Yep.
So, real quick, Adam puts all the budget. This is what's going to happen if we don't get this. And don't you know it? Within a couple of days, there's people saying, "How come we can't go swimming?
It was amazing.
How come you're putting a fence
They're
around?
putting a fence around Luther Hill?
What do you mean
why
no
is that?
no lifeguards? Forget about that.
People honestly
Forget
didn't
about.
understand
Listen,
it.
you guys understand that the fire department doesn't even get any training. Okay, that means extrication. If there's a bad car accident, they can't use the jaws of life. The dive team goes down, no training. That goes out the door, and the other one was, I believe,
High risk. There's high fall. If you have to rappel for any reason. Trench, yes. Close quarter rescues.
So, not that that's a big thing around. I don't know if that's.
You don't?
But the other two, are you kidding me? You're going to have to call in a dive because of the lack of certification training, and the fire department can't do that. They're going to have to call dive teams in from other
They're going to have to call regional dive teams in.
regional dive teams.
So they're going to have to come from.
So I hope
wherever
you can
they
hold.
come from.
If something happens where you're trapped in a car, hold your breath. It's going to take an awful long time for the dive team to get there.
And when I went to the meeting with Bob when Bob got up there.
Disgusting.
Bob Parsons got up there and he spoke about this link to the selectmen. And when he sent the initial letter, he sent an initial letter up to the selectmen, and Bob got up there and just said point blank, look, I've been telling you guys this since 2012. This is not something we just rolled up with on the table and said, hey, we need this training. It's like that training is part and parcel of what they do. There's the ongoing training for just being a firefighter, learning how to put out fires, doing all the stuff that these guys do, the first aid, the CPR, all that stuff. This is kind of above and beyond, but it's also part of what they do, and that's what that $30,000 went to pay. Now, the thing I never get, and let me give you complete disclosure here, my daughter dates a Spencer Fire Department employee, and you know what? My whole family was involved in one way or the other with the fire department. Everybody was volunteers. I was on the Boy Scouts. We did brush fire maintenance and wildlife maintenance and stuff like that. When there were brush fires, we got called out of school. So I respect the fact these guys walk into burning buildings. When I'm hauling ass out, and the fact that these guys can't get any love absolutely amazes me. When they wanted a fire truck, it was like, oh, now they want a new fire truck. Like they're asking for new BB guns. I want the Red Ryder BB gun. It's like, no, that's not the case. This isn't some toy these guys want. They want the best equipment to do their job to, and check this out, save lives and possibly save our homes in the event of a fire. That's huge. So, if I act like I'm an advocate for this, everybody on the show is an advocate for this because this is important. This stuff actually matters. And if these guys go out, like Paul was saying, like you mentioned, doing a dive team, say they send somebody down there and something happens, not only can the fire department be held liable, but the town can be held liable. Of
course it can.
So they can't legally do these things. And
that's
people
correct.
are like, well, who has to train to do this? It's like, when you play basketball, you played hockey for years. Did you skate every day? Why? Because the only way you're going to get better at it is to do it as much as
practice.
possible. It's no different with the fire department, folks. And for the $30,000, when they bundle this override and looks like they're going to do it again, and we'll talk about this, that's going back on there.
It should.
And it absolutely should.
Okay, people, you got to get out and vote. Get the information and get out and vote. Don't complain about town services being cut when you don't have any interest in the actual vote or what's on it or what's gonna happen. Don't sit there and say, "Oh, they're putting a fence around the beach. That means we can't go swimming." Yes, that's what it means. You can't go swimming. There's no lifeguards. That's your risk. If you want to go around the fence that says no trespassing and go swim. But if something happens, you've got nobody to blame but yourself.
And it's funny, at the end of the day, for all that they talked about this, and I mean, the selectmen talked about this, you know, the public safety guys talked, the cops, the firemen, everybody got up and talked about this. And apparently it fell on deaf ears. I mean, it really did. And neither one of us was surprised over the backlash of this when people were like, well, how come, you know, don't forget there's also the highway department. You know, another highway department worker was cut, which means that their funding's going to be cut, which in the wintertime, you're going to see guys out, if this goes down in flames again, and people wait until the very end of a snow event to go out and plow.
Oh, well.
Que sera, sera. What do you want me to tell you?
So don't expect that ambulance to come running down that road if it's not plowed, because they can't keep up because they're down, you know, a couple of DPW workers. And then, you know, look at the transfer station. Sorry, Wednesdays and Saturdays only.
That's it. That's all. That's all. It's
so work around your schedule. So you know what the place is going to be like on Saturdays? The place is going to be bombed.
It's going to be a zoo.
It's going to be bombed. That's why I don't even bother.
Well, from what we understand, and the school now. I got a thing here from Chris Woodbury. Chris Woodbury was at this meeting, so I'll just read it. It said, I attended the meeting, and the notes are as follows. $150,000, and this is concerning the school portion of the debt exclusion. $150,000 transferred to technology account from FY 2014. Cuts in the following: 2 kindergarten teachers, 1 East Brookfield teacher, workbooks, library supplies, the school leader conflict resolution positions for the sum of a total of $189,400.
Which is a complete joke considering it's a $23 million budget. To say, oh, look at us, we cut $189,000 or $100 and whatever it is, just leave it in there.
I get it.
What difference does it make?
And the irony here is East Brookfield, they got it right. Well, apparently that didn't make a damn bit of difference when it came time to cutting teachers. Nope. They ended up losing their teachers. So how did that work out for you? You know, and I'm not chastising East Brookfield. East Brookfield did what they felt was in the best interest, and, you know, good for them. I'm glad they could do it. We said this before. But at the end of the day, when Mr. Cloutier is going like this, he's looking to see where to stick the knife in, okay? Because it's like that's exactly what happened. Because at the end of the day, they did the right thing, and Mr. Cloutier made this huge issue of, you know, Leo, you got it right. And it was in the paper, that huge Valentine to Vinny. Oh, well, how'd that work out?
What's funny now that we're talking about that, Mark Carpentier, who
that was a great
got up at the end of that school committee meeting, and very politely rattled off three different things.
It wasn't a speech. I shouldn't say it was a speech. It was more of a soliloquy. It was phenomenal.
It was phenomenal.
It was great public speaking.
And they didn't respond. They didn't respond.
You can't.
He wanted to know.
What are you going to say?
Well, what do you mean, what are they going to say? Don't you think the chair should say, well, this is how we came up with the list? Or maybe we'll look at that again?
They'll
bring it up for discussion?
No, the whole point with this is the only time they'll answer something is like when John Stevens got up a couple meetings ago, and he said, you know, look, I got to leave, blah, blah, blah. And Mr. Cloutier goes, Mr. Chairman, I know we don't normally address this, but because Vinny was going to have egg on his face because John basically called him out and said, look, we're doing our job. We're trying to do the best we can. And Mr. Cloutier was backtracking with, I've got to answer this. When it behooves them to answer you in public, they'll answer you in public. When it doesn't, and Mr. Carpentier was phenomenal. I watched it on. I missed it. I was at a meeting and I watched it. It was
the classic was Ted saying, "Well, you know, you guys already voted, you know, X amount of dollars that you could, you know, put into the IT department." Into this IT situation.
Oh, the IT. Yeah, I love the IT department. We can't even get an answer on that.
But if, you know, if this goes through and this goes through, your share drops down to this. But since you guys already really approved it, maybe you could just keep it at that level. I mean, he said it with a straight face. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
I think he's Gumby sometimes with some of these numbers. It's like, you know, it's kind of a rubber thing. It's fluid. It's like we can move stuff around.
But Mark was cool about it.
That makes sense.
But Mark
was very cool about it.
He's like, oh, well, yeah, we can leave it in there. But you better believe that every single computer that goes into that school will stay there. It is not going to become.
He's absolutely right.
It is
too.
not. It is not going to become school district computers. It will be the town of East Brookfield's computers. And kudos for them. I've never whatever Mark said, and I've never been against East Brookfield in any way, shape, or form. If anything, you know, I always tried to teach. They're part of our school district.
Right.
But I see their frustration with how.
Oh, absolutely.
With how that school gets operated and how things get done. And, you know, well, you have people in Spencer are like, well, you have smaller classes. There's only 3,000 people in the town. Of course they have smaller classes. You want to have smaller classes in the Spencer schools? Advocate for it. Ask for it. Pay the dough. That's pretty simple. You want extra teachers or extra aides? You say, okay, we're gonna ask for an override. We want to shrink that class size from 26, 27, and 28 down to 14, 13, or whatever it is. You got to ask for it. This is what we want as parents. PTO, parent-teacher organization. See how those three words go together?
Oh, yeah. They go together
parent,
great.
teacher, associate, or whatever it is.
Just try getting people to show up.
I understand that.
And
but
people were, to be fair, people were showing up. But when you go from 30 to the next meeting going down to 6, it's like, you know, everybody, I mean, people get mad at me when I get up at school committee meetings and I say something, and I can hear people going, oh. It's like, you know what? But at the end of the day, I'm going to get up and I'm going to say what I think. And if you don't like it, tough. I could give a damn less. I really could care less. I'm like that kid Timmy in the picture with the balloon.
You almost said the S word, didn't you?
I came close.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I'm like that kid Timmy. You know, everybody wants to be loved and appreciated. Not Timmy. Timmy doesn't give up. You know, and that's exactly how I feel. I don't care. If I cared, I wouldn't be doing this show. People either like my opinion or they don't like my opinion. It doesn't matter. But you know what? The point is I have an opinion, and I'm not afraid to say what's on my mind.
Oh, and that's the difference.
And that's people need to do that. You can't advocate
well,
and be quiet.
That brings us back to the town thing, because you can't sit there and say, well, how come the fence in the park? How come the fence in the beach in? Hello, pay attention. It's not. They're doing it because the override failed. It was all spelled out.
It's amazing.
Drives me nuts.
Let me get back to these
Go
numbers.
ahead.
And the numbers here, we got $145,000 in proposed transportation reimbursement will not be cut from the budget. They went from basically from 70% on transportation reimbursement to 90%,
Correct.
which was great. They have decided that if it goes through, they will re-access the town. They will re-access the towns, which will be in the form of reductions. $250,000 in health care savings will be distributed as follows. $50,000 to legal funds, and the remaining $200,000 to be used towards technology upgrades. And the reason for the legal funds, and I understand this, it's because, well, let's see, Mr. Cloutier's got a lawsuit. There's going to be a couple other lawsuits coming up. I heard there's another lawsuit coming up. There's also, we're in contract negotiations, which means that's going to be a ton of legal work. You know,
it's been legal work for a couple of years now.
This isn't going to stop. So that's part of the reason for the $50,000, and I agree with that. Mr. Cloutier made that at the second meeting, and I agree 100%. They have voted to submit an article as follows: $143,488 for technology, with our portion being the $117,406, and East Brookfield's at $26,082. So it's my understanding that this money is going to go to build up the computer fund so that they no longer have to ask for the debt exclusion.
Correct.
The town assessment for Spencer, I can't speak for East Brookfield, but I know the town of Spencer's assessment is somewhere around, I think, $260,000, which, as far as the select board is concerned, is manageable. After talking to a couple of the selectmen,
right, that's
doable. So those are pretty much off the table. So looking forward at that, we're not going to have to deal with override or debt exclusion for the school, but the override for the town is still going to be on for town services.
About $400,000.
And I was wrong when I said, I did say on one of the Facebook sites, I mentioned that because I was erroneously told there was over 500 people that had not voted when they didn't flip the ballot over, and it wasn't. It was in the mid-40s, so that was my mistake. And I mentioned that on Facebook, and I wanted to mention it.
Did he mention in there that the town also gave $117,000 in free cash?
Yes, there was. That wasn't in this because that wasn't part of that discussion. But yes, the town had $117 and change in free cash, which they used to defray the cost of what it was going to cost for the computers. And there was a lot of discussion about, well, how come we're giving them the free cash And I kind of understand that now because it's like we're going to get the transportation
That's
reimbursement.
the only reason why. That's the only
So it's
way
going to
they
be
could-
kind of a wash.
It's basically
Because
it's about $118,000
Right.
for with the transportation reimbursement.
So
or
that
something like
becomes
So,
kind of
yep.
a wash. So that, because at first I was like, we're going to give them free cash? I mean, because keep in mind, the reason that the school doesn't have their override is because the administration did not go out and fight for this. I mean, did anybody? And we've beat that to death.
Yeah,
but
I don't
it's
wanna-
like
I don't
at the
wanna
end of the
talk.
day, nobody fought for this, so you don't have it, and there's a reason for it. But moving forward, this might be the deal that takes care of the school portion of it, and at least we can work on our portion of it and say, look, can we get town services up and running again? And I think it's huge. I think there's too many things. I think there's the police, there's the overtime. People were stunned when they said, what do you mean there's not going to be a 4th of July parade? What do you mean there's not going to be a family fun day? Well, if there's no overtime, they can't pay for the, they're going to have to pay for it it's volunteers that raise the money. So that means volunteers have to spend more money now to pay for the cops, which that's understandable. So it is what it is. So the police can't do parades, they can't do family fun days, they can't do, Halloween things and the Christmas parade and all that stuff. That all ends. And this isn't, people are like, well, this is what's the word I'm looking for? Blackmail. Selectmen are blackmailing the town. No, the town is running at 2008 levels in terms of
blackmail.
in terms of how they're running their offices. And I mean, everybody has stepped up.
Mr. Gaudette has already gone through and said, whoever's in those offices, it's state mandated. You have to have this. And they're running at minimal employment to make the place work. You know what? Forget it. You don't want to pass it? Close the town hall. Let it be open 1 day a week. Let's see how people like that.
It could,
or 2 days a week. Tuesdays and
come to
Thursdays.
it.
Tuesdays and Thursdays are the only days that you're going to be able
It
to
could
go
definitely
to town hall.
come. I mean, at some point, it could come to that. I mean, the thing that kills me with that, with the whole thing with, you get the people that want to say no, and that's fine. I get that. I mean, there's people who are financially not in a situation, but I love the people that have the signs that say, town override equals $500 per year. Now, with the town override, the debt exclusion, and the school override, it was $250 total. Now they're saying
on an average house of
on an average, not necessarily on every single household, but on an average. And these guys are out there saying it's $500. If you're gonna, and you're accusing the town, oh, the town's lying. Town's lying. Well, who gave you your facts, Einstein? You're saying $500 for an override? It's like, if you're going to tell the story, tell the right story.
Well, what the person doesn't realize is that because of those overrides and the things that have gone on for the last couple of months, guess what, buddy? The valuation of your house has dropped. Try selling it.
Oh,
see what it's worth.
It's dropping off.
Whoever's putting the signs out there, you're killing the valuation of my house.
It's not.
Right?
It's not a good situation.
Because you're a liar. You get the lack of information. So, anyways.
One thing I did. I know you weren't at this meeting. It was actually a good meeting. I was really surprised. I went to the meeting last Monday night, and they actually had a Spencer revitalization study getting underway. Mm-hmm. Now, this is paid for by the CBGB. Some people think that Spencer's paying for this. They're not. This is a grant. And there was some hits on our site saying, how can they afford to do this? Well, they can't. What this was, the CBGB program, is they've come in on a couple of times now. They've been assessing for the last couple of years, and Adam's been a big part of the responsibility for getting this done. And what it's done is basically they're trying to target certain houses in the downtown district, because there's a lot going on. Mechanic Street's going to be redone. Mm-hmm. Part of Main Street's going to be redone. At some point, they're going to take 31 so that it actually hooks up with Elm Street. That's in the talks. And as part of this program, it's this whole thing with targeting buildings that are at risk. People that have houses that for one reason or another, maybe they were foreclosed, maybe they just don't have the money. And what this company is doing is they're coming in, and it's a group of individuals, and everybody has their own professional take on this. One guy's an architect, one guy's an engineer, one guy's a financial planner, one guy works with different groups
Sure.
and different grants. And what they do is they come in, and they're going to go around, and they're going to be. If you see people taking pictures of your home, that's what these guys are doing. They're taking pictures. They're trying to get a median value kind of thing going. They're trying to get this whole grid going and an Excel sheet going to say, okay, these are our top 10 houses of houses we feel that, you know, could benefit the district. Because you got to remember, like when Danny did Spencer Auto Body, when he fixed that up, when Kelly's did a beautiful job on her hair salon right next to the Sugden block.
Okay. Yep.
When the folks took over the floral shop, I can never remember.
Apple Blossom.
Apple Blossoms. Another situation where a small improvement like paint made a huge difference downtown. When John and his wife did, we used to have Mad Max Video, the pizza pub. They did that. They did a nice, beautiful, upscale kind of modern looking plaza there. Little things like that make a difference. Josh is talking in my ear, and what they were saying is basically little changes make huge changes, because it kind of has a ripple effect, and it does. When you're driving through town and all of a sudden you see somebody's done an improvement on their place, it makes a huge difference. And what they're hoping is if they can offer low interest loans to these people through grants, through the Chamber of Commerce and these other places, if they can make money available to them at reasonable rates, and some of it I know in other instances, not necessarily in this, sometimes it can be done for like little or no money as long as you hang on to the building for a certain amount of time. I mean, there's all different kinds of programs. And the input was incredible. I mean, it was a very packed meeting for a very short notice. And the place was flooded, and I was like, this is a great idea. And it says here, the study will assess 50 to 60 distressed properties within the community development target area. They may be vacant, abandoned, underutilized, or in the foreclosure process. The consultant will assess physical conditions of these properties and identify potential costs for improvements. And basically what they're hoping is, through the community development block grant, is try to get the funding to have people come in and help us get this ball rolling. It's a way to kind of revitalize the district. And one of the things that needs to happen, and somebody on the committee had mentioned this to me. I've been talking to Mike Toomey, who does some of this stuff, and he had some great ideas. One of them, I thought this is an excellent idea. The New England Real Estate Journal should be sent an email so they could post the news of the meetings to attract potential investors. The Spencer Community Center should be labeled as such, and it should be listed for the senior center's square footage needs, as well as having the various classrooms detailed in a layout. Once that is done, the cost of getting the facility up and projected operational costs could be used to calculate what the rental should be, and that would help dictate the kind of the type of tenants we would target. And another thing he said was, and this is great, he says, we have 18,000 cars per day going by the Sugden block, yet not a single indication that we are looking at, nor will be developing, I'm having a hard time tonight, accepting development proposals going forward. Nor do we have any mention of the building that there is an organization meeting to develop the criteria to take public input from developers. Now, if you're going to sell Sugden block, why not tell somebody? You know, we don't have any signs in that window saying, looking for potential investors. You don't necessarily, I mean, I understand there's the RFP process, and this thing takes time, and it's, you know, it's like moving at a snail's pace, and this is no rap on anybody on that committee. I know these committees take time, but in the meantime, generate some interest. It's summertime. People are going by, they're taking their time, the windows are down, they're looking around. You put a nice looking sign in a couple of those windows of those vacant spots in that building, you're going to generate some interest. And along with some of Mike's other suggestions. Josh, did you want to jump in here? Do you know how much, Josh, jump in on this. Do you know how much money they might be asking for the building?
I don't know how much they were asking, but I remember when they were talking about it. I believe it was Kurt that got up and said,
that was a few years ago, I remember that.
We're not getting enough money for it, we need more money. Well, that building needs to be rehabbed. The amount of money you're going to dump into that place to rehab it and actually bring it up to code is going to be incredible. You're going to have to get the building for next time.
Excuse me.
Because you're going to have to dump into it. You know, you got to fix the structure. You got to bring all of the plumbing, electrical, everything up to date.
Roof, brick.
Yeah, I mean, the building is in rough shape. So to ask, you know, whatever, a couple $1 million, $3, $4 million, whatever, and then to dump that kind of money in it, I guess you could do it, but your rents are going to be so high, and now you're a business looking at moving into a building in Spencer, and I don't know, we're doing horrible things to the town anyway, you know. you have these overrides
Can't
that
argue.
go down in flames, the property values drop, people move out, people are taking their kids out, but I'm going to put this great new building in, fix it up, and get some great businesses in there. I mean, the whole thing's messed up. You can't ask that much. What you need to ask for is for somebody to actually take care of the building, restore it, and have a nice looking building there to bring in some businesses and make the center of town, that one section of the center of town, very nice. But that's the best you're going to get.
To be fair, I mean, I was at that meeting when Kurt talked about that, and part of the reason for that was because we had just sold DPI, which is David Prouty Intermediate, which became the Senior Living Center, which is, they did a beautiful job with that. They pumped a lot of money into that too. Had just sold that for, I believe, 110. Don't quote me exact figures, but it was around 110, $115,000, which is pretty short money. Granted, they had to throw money into it, but that's a beautiful piece of property too. And the thinking at that time, and I agreed with it at that time, was we don't want to turn around and sell this, sell ourselves short on a building again.
Well, are they is the town receiving any residual income from that?
From DPI?
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of.
You don't have to pay taxes on it?
Well, I think, Josh, do you know if there's an abatement program on that?
You have to pay real estate taxes, don't you?
Right, but I know there was, right, in terms of,
They may have given the building away, but look what they got in return. It's beautiful now. What would have happened if they sold it for $1 million or $2 million?
Nothing.
Well, they never would have gotten
it. Would have gotten ripped down.
Condos in there.
Yeah.
Condos would have been really expensive.
No, that's a good point.
Vacant condos. You got to be reasonable. And that building was in horrible shape. They had to do some serious work there to get that place livable. So you're looking at the same thing with the Sugden block. You got to do serious work there. So, or do what the town's doing now. Hang on to it and let it fall down.
I would rather see it gone. Let it go for short money.
Oh, you got it. Well, we've been through this process now, Josh, and this was when this was first discussed. This was 4 years ago, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, and since then the Sugden block has just, because like everything else in this town, we can't fix it because we don't have the money.
4 or 5 years ago, what is?
Been upstairs in the Sugden block?
A long time ago, I think maybe 3 years ago, Josh.
Don't they have like a gym or something up there? Or?
There was Twisters was up there.
Out, like a lot of the other businesses in that building. But go up on the second and third floor of that building and just take a look around. It will scare you. Yeah, you go into some of those little businesses that they have there where they've got the electrical running through conduit on the outsides of the walls, and there are holes in the walls, and the floors are scary.
Wow.
I mean, it needs to be fixed, and it's going to cost a lot of money. So you got to be realistic about this.
Yeah.
If you want to keep a nice building in the center of town, you got to do what you got to do it. You're not going to make a mint off this thing. And
short term, you wouldn't, but long term you would. If somebody came in with,
they will, yeah. But the town can't look at this as a money making.
No. Oh God,
option.
no.
They got to look at this as, let's keep this big giant brick building standing. It's a landmark. It's a historic landmark. It's been there for so long.
But what I'm saying is, if you let it go for short money, get somebody in there that's gonna, or some investors are gonna revitalize the place, and it's gonna come back with real estate taxes. It's gonna come back with somebody going in there and renting the place out. At least it's gonna get updated and make it somewhat. What's the word? I don't want to say. It'll shine, shine it up a little bit, that type of thing.
Oh, there's no question. That's the situation. I mean, we're at now, and it's like, let's face it, Sugden block was never going to be a cheap fix. I mean, look the town hall.
But the thing is, if you let it go for cheap money,
somebody's going to fix it up.
But at the end of the day, the town's not going to have to worry about being a landlord, first of all. And if they get $1 a year, they're still like this. That's at least we don't have to worry about.
No, I get it. It's like, you got at some point you got to just kind of cut your losses and say, look, would you rather have something that, you can have something that looks nice, or you can have something that's just looks like what it is now. It's like it looks like it needs some work. There's absolutely no question.
Huge.
We got about 4 minutes left. I'd like to, Aaron, could you put up the thing about the fire hydrants with James Laney and the Boy Scout Troop 201? The graphic we've got for them, painting the fire hydrants. I want to give a shout out to these kids. They did a great job. If you haven't noticed lately on Route 9, all the fire hydrants have been painted, and I imagine in other parts of town also. The Spencer Water Department would like to thank James Laney, Eagle Scout candidate, and Boy Scout Troop 201 for their community service to the town of Spencer and the Spencer Water Department with the recent painting of numerous red and yellow fire hydrants in downtown Spencer. James contacted the Spencer Water Department in providing his service as part of his Eagle Scout project. Water Department was happy and glad to be contacted and excited about the work. And they wanted to thank a lot of people. Thanks to Monet Landscaping, LaFlame Painting, Fabricating, and Production Machinery Incorporated for the donations. Kudos to you guys. I think that we don't get a lot of good news that often, and I thought that was fantastic. The other thing was the Second Chance Animal Shelter, guys. Second Chance Animal Shelter, again, they're having their tournament July 19th. You'll be on vacation that week, right? I believe you're gone.
I think so.
8 a.m. tee off, 12 o'clock lunch, 9 holes using the best ball format.
Go put your teeth back in, will you?
Oh, my God, I swear. Dunroman Country Club at 262 Lower Road, Gilbertville, Massachusetts. And again, this goes to help Second Chance Animal Shelter. And along those lines, I'd like to send a shout-out to Carol that runs the Spencer Rescue Squad. I don't think these folks get enough love down there. I mean, they do. I saw her at the dump the other day, and she's getting older, and she's been doing this for years. And I mean, Carol Gosher, and they bust their tail. I mean, they take in cats, they take in dogs. If they get calls, they go out and they do.
You said
the animal shelter. I'm sorry.
Listen.
That's the last time I drink before a show.
Let's stop. Can we stop for 1 second? Okay, he's had enough. Okay, that was a Second Chance Animal Shelter he was really talking about, not the Spencer Rescue Squad. It's a Second Chance Animal Shelter
for the golf tournament.
Yes,
I'm talking about the Spencer Animal. Talking about the Spencer Animal Shelter. They do. Carol Gosher works for the Spencer Animal Shelter. Boy, it's been a long day. They do a great job, and nobody ever really talks about that. And they take in all kinds of animals. They're doing all kinds of work. They're always looking for donations. So if at all possible, if you can get a hold of them, you can get a hold of them through the police department. And I believe they're in the Spencer phone book also. I believe.
Yes.
Last thing is the Cancer Cure Walk, guys, for Boston. 2014 Boston Cure Search Walk for Children's Cancer is September 27th at 2014. Event schedule registration is check-in is at 4 p.m. and the open ceremony and walk is at 5 p.m. and that's at the Franklin Park Zoo in Boston, Massachusetts.
Giraffe entrance.
The giraffe entrance. Man, that's it.
You sure?
We got a couple minutes left. Is any final thoughts? Any like maybe I shouldn't be talking tonight?
Final thoughts. Well, just on a lighter note, everybody probably has seen the two shirts, and actually, let's face it, it's the end of the school year, start of summer. When you mentioned something about wearing wait till you see my shirt, I knew exactly what it was. But we like to say that this is more of a kickoff to summer than anything else. And we understand everybody's going to be on vacation. We still hope you get a chance to watch the show or catch it on YouTube. We got a lot going on in two small towns,
It's pretty crazy.
The school district has to get turned around. Everybody was talking about how many kids were leaving the 8th grade, and instead of going on high school, going someplace else. There's a lot of kids that are still going to go to David Prouty, So I said it before, I'll say it again. We've got some great teachers in this district. My kids are in 3rd grade, on their way to 3rd grade and 5th grade. And every teacher that has touched them has made a difference in their lives. So
there's no question. It's funny. We didn't think tonight was going to be that busy. We were hoping to talk about other things. But, again, things keep coming up. In fact, June 26th at 7 p.m. is the town meeting. It's going to be a short meeting, but that's going to be important. That's a week from is it a week from?
Well, the 24th is a school committee meeting.
Next week.
The 24th is a school committee meeting.
Right, and the 26th is going to be the town meeting.
So that's got to be a Tuesday, Thursday.
Yep.
Is the school committee meeting at 2 o'clock, Josh?
Yeah, I believe the school committee meeting is at 2 o'clock. From now now on. We're doing them at 2 o'clock.
That is going to be a 6 o'clock meeting.
Down in Mexicali?
Oh, my God. All right, so anything else? Any final
No,
thoughts?
I just have a safe 4th of July, everybody. Have a great start to the summer and enjoy your family. And I'll be at the beach this weekend.
I'm going to take linguistics course in the
101.
meantime. Thanks for being with us tonight, folks, and we'll see you next time. Have a
2
good
weeks.
time.
2
Take
weeks.
care.